What's up, guys? I'm Joe. Today I'm talking about the new 21 Pilots album, Trench. So 21 Pilots are back with their fifth studio album, Trench. This is an album I wasn't quite sure if I was going to cover because, admittedly, 21 Pilots aren't a band I'm all that familiar with. But I put a poll out on Twitter and Instagram, and you guys wanted to see this review. Anyone watching, I put these up from time to time, so if you want to follow on social media, you might get a chance to put your vote in. Like I said, I don't know too much about this band in the past. They aren't a band that ever really seemed to click with me. From an outsider's perspective, their rise to fame seemed pretty sudden. And while, just seeing from YouTube videos and things like that, or on social media from people I know going to their shows, while their live show does seem pretty exciting, the music just never really clicked for me, like I said. My introduction to the band was through Blurry Face, and I just found it to be a bit all over the place musically. There was so much going on musically as far as rock, hip-hop, electronic, even like folk and reggae at times on that record, and I just had a hard time kind of connecting to it and finding any of the songs to be particularly memorable. So I didn't really think I'd be too interested in Trench, that is, until I heard the first single, Jumpsuit. The track had this eerie, ominous feel to it, packed to the brim with, crunchy, garagey guitar sounds. This explosive ending with Tyler Joseph just screaming out through the rest of the track. This track really floored me, got me, it piqued my interest, and it led to what is, a pleasant surprise of an album for me. For me, and especially with the mindset I had going into this record, the band just feels super focused on this album. They've created this world, this sort of concept that informs the record and how you should feel about it. There's like an aesthetic to it. And even if the concept isn't the clearest or easiest to follow at times, it does a good job of grounding the band. And they haven't thrown out any of those musical influences. You get a lot of that stuff on here. It definitely sounds like 21 Pilots from what I know of them. It just sounds tighter than what I've heard from the band so far and a lot more focused. That mood continues as you flow from Jumpsuit right into Levitate, which has this nice driving drum beat in the background, these pulsating electronic sounds, as Tyler Joseph flows throughout the track with more of his rapping style. And from here, there are just a string of solid tracks throughout most of the record. As I mentioned, there is a concept to this album which, if you're a fan of the band, you've probably dug into fairly deeply, and I won't get too bogged down into it here for my purposes of just reviewing the album, because I feel like there's a sort of duality here. You could be in it for the concept and the story and the characters and like the videos that kind of add to it. If you want to know more about it, you can watch the music videos, or you can just look at the songs on an individual level and realize that there's still a lot to offer lyrically as far as mental health and faith and dealing with one's own insecurities, and I definitely see it as a good thing. It's not just specifically the concept. While that does root it all together, you can go at these songs individually. It's not something that has to be listened to in full, or it has to be connected. There are some songs that stand out on their own. And speaking of the songs themselves, there definitely does seem to be a focus on creating these catchy, memorable, lyrical moments. These songs will quickly stick with you after even one or two listens. Speaking of which, a song like Morph has this really catchy chorus with those falsetto vocals. I do like that quite a bit. The hooks don't end there. Cuts like Chlorine and The Hype are absolutely infectious, both in the verses and the choruses. The Hype in particular, which is sort of echoing Oasis for me, has that great chorus and probably some of the more uplifting instrumentals on an album that is mostly pretty moody. However, some of these aspects are a bit of a double-edged sword for me and may detract from the replayability of the album, for me anyway, in the future. For example, the hooks in songs like Nico and the Niners, the East is Up thing, and My Blood, I'll Go With You, that line's sort of repeated time and time again. While otherwise good songs, these things can get a little distracting and a little bit annoying, admittedly, once you've listened to it 5 or 6 times. While I otherwise really like Nico and the Niners, for what it's worth, that line just kind of gets too repetitive for me. Also, as someone who didn't really know what to expect from 21 Pilots going into this, I feel like the album doesn't fully live up to the energy presented with Jumpsuit. It never really reaches that peak of energy the track has, and then the rest of the songs don't really have that bite to them. Now, of course, that's more of a personal thing. I feel like if you're a 21 Pilots fan, there is obviously plenty to like on this record, and you wouldn't necessarily be looking for more garage rock type sounds out of the band. But as someone that's relatively new to them, I feel like Jumpsuit set up a lot of promise, and while I do like the record, never quite gets there as far as that energy. Of course, as I mentioned, there's still plenty to like about the record. Some of the other high points for me include the song Neon Gravestones, which has a really good sonic build to it musically, which lends itself to the great production that's on the record, but there's sort of a melancholic piano line. The song builds up with these very atmospheric type synths pulling everything together in the middle. And a song like Bandito stands out to me for its kind of synth-heavy, almost 80s infused outro going on there. I think that was pretty cool. You know, as I mentioned, Chlorine and Morph have some of my favorite catchy hooks on the record. And a song like Pet Cheetah is pretty cool because it sort of just changes things up. It's definitely more hip-hop heavy in the drums and the overall feel of the track. And Cut My Lips, another great one too. It definitely adds to that moody atmosphere that a lot of this record has. Again, just very catchy vocals throughout the verses and the chorus. Something that could definitely be said about the record as a whole is that, you know, every song here is going for that memorable hook, and you'll be humming along to them in no time. So yeah, overall, like I said, a pleasant surprise of an album. It's making me want to kind of, you know, journey back through their discography again, maybe give it all another shot. But from sort of an outsider's perspective into the band, they seem tighter, they seem more focused than ever. The kind of mood and concept of the album lends itself well to grounding the band. You know, they are successfully able to take all of these musical influences they have without it all sounding too messy and too all over the place. So yeah, I'm feeling a good 3.5 out of 5 for this album. Let me know what you think of the album in the comments, whether I'm right, whether I'm wrong. As always, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you all next time.